Hello and welcome to another episode of r/MaliciousCompliance. My name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to bringing you guys today's top stories. Before I do though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, as well as make sure you got notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. My granddad is a legend. Just a short one. My granddad spent close to 60 years in the building trade, starting when he was 16. This is a story he told me today of when he first started at age 16. So my granddad starts working at this one job site back in the 1960s. Never done any building work before, so they put him in with a very experienced worker who was the supervisor of the job, or foreman if we use trade language. The foreman was sort of the hardline supervisor nobody likes, but he gets the job done. One day, he gets my granddad to mark bricks on a wall with a pencil, measuring for one thing or another. Now, foreman insisted on using a white pencil so it stood out from the red bricks. Only it was winter and had recently snowed, so my granddad, happy as anything to get back as a hardline foreman, went and marked up everything on site that needed to be marked. Foreman comes back an hour later to check, can't see anything, and accuses my granddad of slacking. Granddad happily points to where he had marked the bricks and wipes away some of the recent snow to prove it. Then he hands in that day's paperwork, completed in white pencil, and wishes the foreman a good evening. As my granddad tells it, the guy got very red in the face and insisted from the moment forward that very standard gray pencils would be fine from that point on. TLDR, my granddad was a pain in the ass at 16 and used white pencil in the snow and in unofficial documents just to annoy his supervisor. Planning permission, you say? Let's see if this survives the pissing down that started now. Talked to the neighbor today. So far, sounded like a good sport. Original. Not sure if this fits here or a different sub, so here it goes. Behind my house, there's an area reserved for garages. Plans were drawn in 1968, and only 3 of the 18 allocated plots have a garage built. The remaining have a cement base, and we park there. As spaces are narrow, 2.4 meters wall to wall, and brick garages are expensive, I thought of having a pre-built one installed for a quarter of the cost. Someone on the same street saw me take measures and asked if I was putting a garage up. Said yes, to which they replied if I had gotten planning permission. Confused, I said no, I don't think I need it. It turns out I do, to which he replied that he would then call them after I have a garage installed. After looking into it and confirming I do need to apply for planning permission at an extra cost, I was a bit annoyed. All I wanted was a place to use as storage, and here's this guy being kind of passive-aggressive with his comments. The reason is actually that he wants to buy some of the plots near mine, but no one wants to sell them to him. I can be very petty, so I bought a run-down Lutton van and had it parked there. Sorn and using storage. No planning permission required. TLDR, needed planning permission to put a garage, bought a van instead. The professor asked me to share info that I did not want to share. ETA, a genogram is like a family tree but with extra symbols, e.g. a beer bottle for my alcoholic father, and lines connecting each person. The type of line dictates the type of relationship, close, smothering, distant, estranged, abusive, etc. I studied social work in school. I found myself doing 3 genograms over the course of my schooling. 1 for Intro to Social Work, 1 for Sociology of Mental Health, and then another in my last year. I have some not fun family history and trauma, and so these assignments were never my favorite, but my teachers for the first 2 didn't pressure me to disclose only what I wanted and be vague. One even said I could do a fictional family. The last one did not. See, one thing we learned was that bringing up a client's trauma outside of a therapeutic environment can be harmful. We were BSWs, which are not qualified therapists. During intakes and assessments, we learned to tell clients they don't have to give more details than they wanted to. There's a whole host of reasons behind this, but I'll spare you all the lecture. I brought this up in class after the teacher assigned an extensive genogram with an accompanying 5-page essay on what we learned about ourselves. A third of the class expressed the same concerns. His reasoning was, you might be doing this with your clients and you shouldn't ask them to do anything you wouldn't yourself. Not unless I get a graduate degree and become a therapist or a psychologist. The teacher also didn't give us an answer when asked if resources for therapy would be provided if this brought up any students' past trauma that they needed to talk about. Oh, and of course, he added, this will only be shared with me and is 100% confidential, unless you choose to share. Literally not any of our concerns, but I don't want to share any of my deeply personal business with this man. The assignment didn't bother me as much as the hypocrisy of it all. I said, between class assignments and therapy, this will be my 5th one. Could I turn one of those in and be given an alternate assignment? He wouldn't budge. He said I didn't need to disclose anything I didn't want to, but followed it up with, but I expect you to take this assignment seriously. And when I turned in a rough draft with as much as I was willing to disclose, he said it wasn't detailed enough. All right, fucker, it's showtime. I have a lot of family trauma that's not mine to disclose, and I rarely ever disclose it, at least not with anyone who would ever meet the folks involved. My own is embarrassing enough, but definitely not as bad as some. But I put all of that down and wrote about it. Then, the following week, the teacher asked if any students would like to share their genogram, if they're comfortable. My hand shot up. I'll spare you the details, but I basically gave the class a content notice to allow anyone to leave who may be triggered. A common thing in social work. And then I just shared all of it. All the relationships and why they were effed up, why I hate my dad and my sister resents my mom, and all that. Cheery smile on my face the whole time. The teacher uncomfortably thanked me for my bravery. A few students shifted in their seats, feeling uneasy. Others smiled. Then my friend volunteered to share. She didn't like the assignment either, but she's not one to argue with teachers. Her presentation trumped mine. Girl had a real messed up family. And by the end, she was red in the face and everyone was super uncomfortable. Next person to volunteer to share was the girl who was in foster care. I'm not even sure if her sharing was malicious compliance, but hers was the most uncomfortable to hear. She started to cry at the end, and another student who also grew up in foster care started to tear up. The teacher cut us off after that. Another teacher overheard, and the following week we had some serious discussions in class. I and the other students who shared were referred to the school's mental health center. Another teacher I had a good relationship with checked me in, and I told her what happened. I can't tell for certain what went on, but it created a stink in the department. It's been several years since I graduated, but I heard there's now an alternative assignment for the Genogram. So lesson is, don't tell your social work students to do something that you tell them to never do to their clients. And you don't get into social work unless you're traumatized AF. My teacher called my work bad and my attitude even worse. It then got featured in the biggest art gallery in the country. I might not be in the right sub. My art teacher said I wasn't good enough, so I worked my damn hardest to prove him wrong, and that's the summary. Context. The school I go to is well respected in my country, so it was not uncommon for venues to request a display of a student's work or to ask for students to sing live for them. On the occasion in question, the largest art gallery in the country, Gallery X, had asked my school to submit inspired art to be out on the display. The school agreed and said they would submit 5 pieces of work, 1 piece per year for years 9 to 13. Back to the story. I hated art growing up, but it was a mandatory subject until you got to choose your own subjects in year 10. Needless to say, I dropped the subject ASAP. Despite hating the subject, I still put effort into my work, and some of it wasn't that bad. However, at the same time, I would not hide away from expressing my views when we were given a task that I didn't see a point to, even if the teacher was in earshot. Needless to say, my relationship with the art department faculty was not the best. My teacher at the time particularly had it in for me. He was one of those teachers that has the view that their subject should be your most important subject, regardless of your future ambitions. If he thought that you weren't prioritizing art, then he would make your life hell. Yet again, I hated art as a subject. He knew this, but I would still do any work to set the best of my ability. We had just finished a project where we had to mix different pigments to create our own unique color. Being colorblind, I struggled a lot as I literally could not differentiate between half of the pigments. I gave it my all, but ended up giving up halfway through the project. My teacher hated me for giving up. In his defense, he had tried to make it as easy as possible for me, but I hated the subject and saw a way out, so I took it. My teacher was beyond mad. When we went to hand in the project, he gave me a lecture about how I needed to put in more effort in my work, and because the quality of the work was unacceptable. Remember, I literally couldn't see half of the project. Once that project was finished, my teacher told us that Gallery X has asked that we create some inspired art. We were basically shown 5 different paintings that we were supposed to recreate in our own way. There was a big fuss about this. People were saying the art schools would be giving out scholarships, that there was a $10,000 reward, and other nonsense that 14-year-olds make up. But, nevertheless, everyone wanted to be the one having their painting in Gallery X. So for the next month and a half, my art classes would work on our own piece. After the first week of working on my piece, the excitement of the new project wore off, and so did my eagerness in lessons. My teacher noticed this and went from complimenting my work to yelling at me that I was doing it wrong. By the 4th week, I was over the project and just wanted to be done with this. With 2 weeks left on the project, my teacher pulls me aside and tells me that my work isn't good enough and I need to improve it. I tried to improve it, but he kept belittling me. So out of arrogance and spite, I made art my most important subject until the end of this project. I dragged myself to each lesson, quietly working to myself to the bone, counting down the days until the deadline of the project. After what seemed like a year to 14-year-old me, the second last lesson arrives. This lesson was not our final touches or anything like that. My teacher had decided that he should review what each student had done well and where they could have improved. He walks around the classroom complimenting everyone's work until he gets to mine. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I'm pretty sure none of it was positive. I do remember, however, how he finished talking about mine. You can tell that OP hasn't given any thought and hasn't taken this seriously. That stung like a bitch because yes, I had lost interest in it, but I still worked hard in my lessons and had given it my best shot. The bell then went, and I sulked out of the class with my tail between my legs. The last lesson finally comes, and I can't wait to be over with this stupid project. The lesson was the big one, too. The judges from Gallery X were coming to our school to judge all the work. They come into our class, do all the formalities, "These look so good. I have no idea how we can decide on only one." Then they start walking around, talking in the room, muttering to each other. The whole class is stood silently at the back trying to hear what they're saying. They do a full lap of the room, then walk back over to my spot. I didn't even notice this as I had turned out after they had looked at the second painting. They then ask the teacher whose work they are stood over. He looks at them almost in disbelief as he gestures to me, and I snap out of my daydream and just smile politely with no idea what's going on. The judges then confer for a whilst my teacher and I frantically try to figure out what's going on. Finally, after about 5 minutes of mumbling, they say that they want to shortlist it to be potentially shown in Gallery X. I look at them in shock, then yet again smile positively and say thank you. I can't begin to describe the look on my teacher's face. I don't think I've ever seen someone more confused, angry, and disappointed all at the same time. My teacher then begrudgingly thanks the judges and walks them to the door. He thanks them again as they leave and stumbles back into the class. He doesn't even congratulate me on my work. He just defeatedly says, "Good work, everyone. As a reward, I'll put on a documentary for you to all watch." And he did just that, not saying another thing until the end of class. Later on that week, I got an email from Gallery X asking for my permission to display my work, of which I happily said yes to. To sum it up, the work that he disrespected and said that no effort went into was selected from 192 others and got featured in the biggest art gallery in the country. Hope you enjoyed. I didn't know being sick was first come, first serve. So this happened to me a while ago, 2014-ish, when I worked at a fast food restaurant in the UK with a red-headed clown as a mascot, as well as for some of the managers there. I have tons of malicious compliance stories from this place, and one day I will get round to posting them all. But for now, here is this one. Now, being an eating establishment, hygiene is very important, as you can imagine. The policy when I started there, and as far as I'm aware, is the same to this day. Maybe even more strict considering the whole pandemic thing that's happening. Was that if you were sick, you had to be 48 hours off from the time you call in sick to ensure that you're better for returning to work so you don't poison the customers. Makes sense, right? I'm ill. I'm handling food. I'm going to get others sick. I'm not feeling great at all this shift. I was feeling a little off in the morning, but thought I might be able to get better by the evening when my shift is. Over the day, I started to get a cough, fever, runny, and blocked nose, headache, full-on cold. The policy also states that if you're going to call in sick, it should be no later than 2 hours before your shift starts. Fair enough. It gets to 2 hours before my small 4-hour shift, and I feel dreadful, so I call up the manager on the shift that day. Hi, manager. It's Bowland. I feel awful. I shouldn't be working today. You can't be sick. We need you today. I'm really not well. I'm coughing and my nose is running everywhere. I already had 3 people call in sick for today, so you need to be here. See you in a couple hours. So here I am, dripping with sweat, looking like death could take me at any moment, with a small smirk on my face. I thought to myself, okay, I guess I'm going to work tonight. I proceed to get ready, get into my car, and drive to work. Now, there's no back door for employees to slip into at this place, so we have to use the main entrance and walk through the dining area and go into the back of the kitchen. So step 1, make sure I'm seen by as many people as possible, looking like something out of a horror movie. I shamble through the front door, making sure to have a fit of coughing complete in my uniform so all the customers can see I'm unwell. I make sure to wave and say hi to my colleagues on the counter in the huskiest voice I have, before wandering through the door that leads to the kitchen. At this point, I'd like to say I was in fact very sick that day and I should not have been working. But I wanted to teach up my boss a lesson, so I might have exaggerated my symptoms just a little bit to make sure that point stuck. I make it to the break room where 2 of my crewmates are and immediately both ask if I'm feeling alright. I tell them no, but I have a point to prove, which is why I'm here. I check the rota in the break room and bingo! I'm on the register, front of house. Everyone can see me. This is perfect for step 2. Ensure each person I serve questions if I'm fit to work. I wander through the kitchen to the register and start working. My first customer places an order and they look a little wary. I get them their food and they go and sit down to start eating. My boss has seen this exchange and you can see the gears turning in his head. Can't be having a zombie serving food. I know, let's put him in the kitchen where they can't be seen. I get told to swap with a person who was working grill. So yes, I'm no longer seen by anyone, but they've moved me from working with wrapped food, which I couldn't contaminate, to working with creating the food from scratch. Great idea, boss. FYI, I never intentionally poisoned someone's food. I was trying to be very good and stepped out of the kitchen every time I needed to cough and blow my nose. Washed my hands and then got back to it. I've been working for an hour or so now, still 3 to go, and by this point I'm feeling lightheaded and unable to focus on what I'm doing. I'm not exaggerating anymore. I'm just not good at all. It's not very busy, so I'm just trying to keep myself on my feet. In walks the night manager, who happens to be the acting store manager too. "Evening, Bowland," grunts and sniffs. "Are you feeling all right?" Slowly shakes head. "Why didn't you call in sick?" "I did, and was told that the others had already called in sick, so I had to be here." She looked around at the pretty empty restaurant and plenty of staff, including the manager who had me come in, sitting in the dining area pretending to look busy while being on his phone. "Clock out, go home, get better, and don't worry about your shifts for the next 2 days." I nod, and just before I go to get my stuff, I see her storm to the manager in the break room, dragging him into the office. I go back to work after a couple of days, like I was told, feeling 100%. I'm greeted by the night manager who checks in on me, which I'm grateful for. I start to work and get caught up on the workplace gossip. Turns out the manager who made me work that day was given a right bollocking that night, and he turned in his resignation the next day. Or so the rumor goes. TLDR, manager makes me work while I'm sick, so I make sure everyone questions whether or not it's safe to eat there. And there you have it, folks, the end of our epic tales of malicious compliance. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like on it, as well as subscribe with notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. As always, my name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.